So we will continue tonight from last night. I think all the people who couldn't remember the 6 perfections decided not to come.
Selamat malam, kita akan melanjutkan pembahasan kita tentang 6 paramita. Dan sepertinya orang-orang yang tidak bisa mengingat ke-6 paramita tersebut malam ini memutuskan untuk tidak datang.
So let's see, can you remember them?
Apakah kita semua bisa mengingat 6 paramita tersebut apa saja?
Okay, first one.
Yang pertama, kedermawanan, generosity.
Okay. Second.
Yang kedua, moralitas, ethical conduct.
Okay, third.
Fortitude.
Fourth.
Virya, joyous effort. Joyous effort.
Joyous effort. Fifth.
Meditative stability.
And sixth.
Wisdom.
Wisdom. Okay, good.
Bagus.
Now the trick is to learn how to practice them.
Tantangan berikutnya adalah bagaimana kita bisa mempraktekkan mereka.
And to know how to practice them, we have to hear teachings.
Sorry.
To know how to practice them, we have to hear teachings about them.
Ya. Untuk bisa mengetahui bagaimana cara mempraktekannya, kita harus mengikuti ajarannya.
Okay, and that's why we're here tonight.
Itu yang akan kita lakukan malam ini.
Okay, so let's start as we did last night with taking refuge in the Buddha Dharma Sangha and generating the bodhicitta motivation so that we know what path we're following, the Buddhist path, and why we're following it, to become Buddhas, to be of the greatest benefit to living beings.
Mari kita memulai dengan mengambil perlindungan dalam Buddha dan Sangha dan mengembangkan bodhicitta untuk mengingatkan kita mengapa kita mengambil jalan ini agar kita semua dapat menjadi Buddha dan membawa kebaikan untuk semua makhluk hidup.
Okay, so yeah. Do you want to translate first in Bahasa?
Okay. Pertama saya akan menerjemahkan pengertian dari perlindungan ini. Saya mengambil perlindungan dalam Buddha, Dharma, dan Sangha sampai saya dapat mencapai penerangan sempurna. Semoga dengan jasa kebaikan yang saya ciptakan dengan mendengarkan Dharma saat ini, saya dapat mencapai kebuddhaan untuk dapat membantu semua makhluk hidup.
So remember that when we're reciting this, imagine in the space in front of you, there's Shakyamuni Buddha, surrounded by all the other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and Arhats and various holy beings, and they're all looking at you with compassion and acceptance and the wish to help you and lead you on the path.
Saat kita melafalkan ini, kita dapat membayangkan Sakyamuni Buddha dan juga Buddha-Buddha lainnya, semuanya sedang ada di depan kita dan semuanya sedang memandang kita dengan penuh rasa kasih sayang dan keterbukaan untuk dapat membantu kita agar kita semua dapat mencapai kebuddhaan.
And then you imagine surrounding you are all the sentient beings.
Dan kita dapat membayangkan kita sedang dikelilingi oleh semua makhluk hidup.
Okay, ones that you like, ones you don't like, and ones that are strangers that you usually ignore. But everybody's there, and you're leading them in turning to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha for spiritual instruction.
Dan kita dapat membayangkan kita sedang dikelilingi oleh banyak sekali orang, baik itu orang yang kita kenal maupun tidak kenal, atau mungkin orang-orang asing yang selama ini kita acuhkan dan kita inginkan untuk semuanya dapat mencapai kebuddhaan.
Yeah. So if there's a family member or friend who you think would really benefit from meeting the Buddha's teachings, when you do these prayers and the visualization, imagine that friend or family member with you, and you're leading them in taking refuge.
Kita juga dapat membayangkan teman atau keluarga yang menurut kita sedang membutuhkan atau dapat mendapat kebaikan dari belajar Dharma, seakan-akan mereka juga sedang ikut belajar Dharma bersama kita.
Okay, so take a moment and do the visualization. So we'll go into a few minutes of silent meditation. So you can observe your breath if you wish and let the mind settle down. Or you can think some more about the four immeasurables and really develop a determination to practice them.
Berikutnya untuk beberapa menit kita akan melakukan meditasi di mana kita dapat semoga kita dapat menemukan pikiran kita yang tenang. Kita juga bisa kontemplasi mengenai keempat perenungan ini agar kita semua dapat mencapai ketenangan.
And then let's generate our motivation.
Mari kita merenungkan motivasi kita.
And think that we are not here to gain some information to teach to others so that we become rich or famous.
Merenungkan bahwa kita di sini bukan untuk belajar agar kita bisa mengajarkan orang lain kemudian untuk mencari keuntungan buat kita diri kita sendiri.
But we're here because we really care about each and every living being and want to be of as much benefit as we can to them.
Tapi kita sungguh-sungguh peduli terhadap semua makhluk dan kita ingin memberikan manfaat untuk mereka semua.
And knowing that as ordinary beings, we don't have a lot of capability to be of great benefit. So we want to attain full Buddhahood, where we'll have the compassion, the wisdom, and the power to be able to be of great benefit to living beings.
Dan kita memahami bahwa kita hanya manusia biasa yang sebenarnya punya keterbatasan, namun kita ingin mencapai kemudahan agar kita dapat memberikan banyak manfaat kepada semua makhluk hidup.
Okay, so contemplate that motivation and make it your reason for being here this evening.
Renungkanlah motivasi tersebut dan jadikan itu alasan mengapa kita ada di sini malam ini.
Okay. So today we're going to start talking about the 6 perfections, the 6 paramitas, individually. So we'll begin with generosity because it's the first one.
Malam ini kita akan membahas tentang 6 paramita dan kita akan mulai dari yang pertama yaitu kemurahhatian.
Okay, so I'm reading from the book Courageous Compassion, and this is volume number 6 in a 10-volume series of books. Written by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, which I assisted in, and it's covering the whole path. And so it's more going into more depth than, just an introductory book, but it's not as complicated as if you're picking up a translation of a philosophical text that was originally written in Sanskrit or Pali.
Ya, jadi malam ini saya akan membaca dari buku Courageous Compassion atau Welas Asih yang penuh keberanian, yang mana buku ini adalah buku ke-6 dari 10 jilid buku yang ditulis oleh Yang Mulia Dalai Lama, yang mana buku ini menjabarkan tentang jalan, dan buku ini sebenarnya tidak terlalu cukup sederhana dan tidak sesulit buku-buku lainnya.
Okay, so if you remember last night, we talked about what generosity is, and it's with a kind heart, then wanting to give to others.
Ingat kemarin malam kita berbicara tentang kedermawanan, di mana ini adalah sifat ingin untuk memberi dengan tulus.
So there's four things, four types of generosity, depending on what we're giving. The first is material, so our possessions, money, our body.
Jadi ada 4 tipe kemurah hatian. Yang pertama adalah dalam bentuk material, di mana contohnya adalah kita memberikan uang kepada orang lain.
The second is giving of protection when living beings are in danger.
Yang kedua adalah memberikan perlindungan kepada orang-orang yang sedang dalam bahaya.
Okay. The third is the giving of the generosity of love when people need emotional support.
Yang ketiga adalah dalam bentuk kasih sayang, contohnya kepada orang-orang yang sedang membutuhkan support secara emosional.
And the fourth is the giving of the Dharma.
Yang keempat adalah pemberian dalam bentuk dharma.
Okay, so when we usually think of giving as a generosity of material things, so we'll start with that.
Jadi kita akan memulai dengan yang pertama, yaitu pemberian dalam bentuk materi.
Yeah, because before living beings can even think of practicing the path to awakening, they have to have their physical needs taken care of. So having food, clothing, shelter, medicine.
Sebelum seseorang dapat berlatih dharma, tentunya orang tersebut membutuhkan banyak sekali kebutuhan materi, seperti makanan, pakaian, tempat tinggal.
Okay, and so it seems like, of course, we should share these things and give them to other people.
Karena itulah kita harus berbagi hal-hal ini kepada mereka.
But when the government wants us to pay more taxes in order to build the roads that all of us drive on, I don't know in your country, but in my country, people say, no, I don't want to give any taxes. But if they don't pay the taxes, then they're not going to have the roads.
Contohnya adalah pada saat pemerintah mengumpulkan pajak. Pajak itu digunakan untuk membangun jalan-jalan yang bisa dilalui oleh orang banyak. Saya tidak tahu kalau di Indonesia seperti apa, tapi kalau di negara saya, orang-orang selalu menolak. Mereka keberatan untuk disuruh untuk membayar pajak.
Yeah. Do people here complain about paying taxes?
Apakah di sini orang-orangnya juga seperti itu?
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, same all around the world. Huh?
Sepertinya di seluruh dunia seperti itu ya.
Yeah. So where we live, you know, you've seen pictures of Sravasti Abbey. We're in a rural area, and so there's not so many people who drive on the roads and so on. But if the county, you know, the county government or the state government didn't take care of the roads, we would be in big trouble.
Contohnya adalah Sravasti Abbey, kita semua sudah melihat videonya, yang lokasinya adalah di daerah pedesaan. Memang tidak banyak yang mengemudi ke sana, tapi jika pemerintah tidak menjaga atau membangun jalannya, tentunya tidak ada bisa mengemudi ke sana atau mencapai tempat itu.
Yeah. And the county even sends, like now in the winter when there's snow on the ground, and you have to shovel the snow away so you can drive. They even come with the big plows and clear the road. in the
Bahkan
winter.
Bahkan pada saat sedang musim salju, bahkan pemerintah setempatnya itu mengirim mesin-mesin, mobil-mobil untuk mengeruk saljunya supaya mobil bisa lewat.
So and we get to know some of the people because we're in a rural area, so we know the people driving the plows and so on. They're so nice and they really want to help. And so I don't mind paying the taxes because we benefit and all of our neighbors benefit.
Kita bahkan saking seringnya berjumpa dengan mereka, kita bahkan mengenal mereka dan mereka semua orang-orang baik. Karena itulah saya tidak keberatan untuk membayar pajak karena semua orang bisa mendapatkan manfaatnya, tidak hanya kita.
Okay, but if I know taxes, our county taxes are not used for war, but federal taxes may be used for war and to create, bombs and things like this. So if we have to pay those, and I used to write on the check, for social welfare projects only, do not use for war.
Kalau pajak yang di pemerintah setempat mungkin digunakan untuk kebaikan, tapi kalau pajak negara kadang-kadang digunakan untuk kepentingan perang. Karena itu saya kadang-kadang kalau sedang menulis cek di sana, saya tuliskan bahwa gunakan dana ini hanya untuk kesejahteraan orang banyak, jangan untuk perang.
Yeah. So I don't think the government pays much attention to that, but for me, I want to be very clear with if I'm giving money that it's not used to harm people.
Mungkin pemerintah tidak peduli dengan apa yang saya tulis, tapi setelah menulis itu saya merasa lebih tenang karena saya memastikan bahwa uang ini tidak digunakan untuk kepentingan yang buruk.
Yeah. So the question sometimes comes up, if you have a family member, let's say who is an alcoholic or who is taking drugs, and they ask you for money, yeah, they're a family member, you love them, but they're going to use the money for some kind of intoxicating substance that is not good for them. So do you give them the money or not?
Kadang-kadang saya sering ditanyakan, jika kita memiliki sanak atau keluarga yang meminta uang atau meminjam uang kepada kita, sedangkan kita tahu bahwa uang itu akan digunakan untuk mungkin orangnya itu pecandu, alkohol, atau obat-obatan. Lalu pertanyaannya adalah, apakah kita meminjamkan uang itu atau tidak?
Yeah. But if you don't give them money, they're going to get really mad. And they're going to say, you're such a cheap person. You have the money. Why don't you give it to me? They'll lie and say, I'm not using it for drugs or alcohol, and they'll pressure you. So do you give them the money?
Kadang-kadang jika kita tidak memberikan uangnya, kemudian orang itu marah terhadap kita dan bilang, oh kamu pelit banget, sebenarnya saya nggak pakai uangnya untuk beli alkohol atau obat-obatan kok, kenapa kamu pelit sekali? Jika begitu kejadiannya, apakah kita masih tetap meminjamkan uangnya?
Okay, who would give them money?
Berapa banyak yang akan memberikan uangnya?
Who would not give them money?
Yang tidak memberikan uangnya?
Okay, I agree with
Saya setuju dengan kalian.
Yeah. So sometimes, to practice compassion for people, you have to not give them what they want. Yeah, because what they want is something harmful, and whether they get mad at you or call you names or whatever, that doesn't matter, because you're looking at the long-term benefit for the other person. So you say no.
Kadang-kadang saat kita mempraktekkan welas asih, ada saatnya kita harus berkata tidak dan tidak memberikan sesuatu jika kita tahu bahwa orang itu akan menggunakan sesuatu itu untuk kepentingan yang buruk. Kenapa kita melakukan ini? Supaya kita berpikir jangka panjang karena kita ingin orang itu yang terbaik untuk orang tersebut.
Okay. And I think every parent knows that as much as you love your kids, you can't give them everything they want.
Setiap orang tua pasti tahu sesayang-sayangnya mereka dengan anaknya mereka, kadang-kadang kita tidak bisa memberikan semuanya kepada mereka.
Yeah. So they may cry and they may complain and they may say, the person across the street, they have all these things, but you're so mean and you don't give me those same things. Oh, and you're such a mean mother, such a mean father. They say those things that they know will hurt you. Do you give them what they want?
Kadang-kadang mereka merengek-rengek, bilang gitu ya, mama jahat atau papa jahat, tidak memberi saya apa yang saya inginkan. Mungkin membanding-bandingkan dengan temannya mendapatkan semua dari orang tuanya. Apakah setelah mereka merengek, kita tetap memberikan kepada mereka?
Yeah, because even though they may pester you, if you give them what they want, they're going to become spoiled brats. And they're not going to know how to get along in society.
Jika kita selalu memberikan kepada mereka, mereka akan menjadi manja, dan dengan demikian mereka tidak akan belajar untuk bisa menerima lingkungan mereka.
Yeah, but sometimes kids are very clever. They know how to wrap their parents around their little finger, and get mom and dad to give them what they want.
Kadang-kadang tapi anak-anak pintar ya, mereka punya siasat untuk bisa mengakali agar mereka bisa dapat apa yang mereka inginkan.
Yeah, I think some of us did that when we were younger.
Ya,
Maybe.
mungkin beberapa dari kita pernah melakukan itu saat waktu masih kita kecil.
Yeah, but in the end, it's kinder if our parents say no,
Namun sebenarnya pada saat orang tua bilang tidak, itu karena mereka baik hati.
But I do think that we would have a much better world and much better societies if we shared our resources. Yeah, because having people who are extremely rich, then you're going to have people who are extremely poor. And the rich are often wealthy because of money they've inherited, yeah, and the poor are often poor because their ancestors didn't have money. There was nothing for them to inherit, and they didn't have the money to pay to go to school.
Ya, jika kita semua saling berbagi, dunia dan lingkungan kita akan menjadi lebih baik. Tidak akan ada orang yang sangat kaya sekali atau sangat miskin sekali. Karena kadang-kadang orang miskin pun sebenarnya mereka membutuhkan uang untuk bisa mendapatkan edukasi yang layak.
Yeah, so this kind of inequality between people living in society, it breeds a lot of hostility and resentment and all sorts of problems.
Kesenjangan sosial ini terkadang menimbulkan banyak sekali konflik-konflik.
Yeah. Whereas as a society, if we have more the attitude of we want to share, so that to make people more equal, then I think people will get along much better.
Andaikan saja di lingkungan kita orang-orang punya hasrat untuk berbagi dan semua orang akan bisa lebih ada perdamaian di antara kita semua.
Many years ago, I was in Israel teaching, and my friends knew a man who was a Muslim Sufi, and I wanted to meet him, so they took me to meet him.
Beberapa tahun yang lalu saya mengunjungi Israel dan kemudian saya diperkenalkan oleh teman saya kenal seorang ini, yaitu pria, dia beragama Muslim, Sufi, dan saya ingin menemui dia.
And he told me that in his religion, you are not allowed to possess something that your neighbor cannot afford.
Dan dia berkata bahwa dalam ajarannya tidak diperbolehkan untuk memiliki sesuatu yang tetangganya tidak bisa beli.
So if your neighbor didn't have enough money to buy something, but you did, you wouldn't get it because it would create bad feelings.
Jadi jika tetangganya tidak bisa membeli sesuatu, kemudian ia tidak akan membeli barang itu supaya tidak menciptakan kesenjangan.
And I thought that was so beautiful, you know, in a religion that you really had to work for a fair society and have a generous mind, yeah, that wanted the poor people to have what you're able to have.
Dan menurut saya itu adalah sebuah ajaran yang sangat indah, di mana kita punya rasa dermawan dan kita ingin orang lain untuk semuanya memiliki apa yang kita miliki.
Okay. So again, I don't know here what happened during COVID, but in the US, the people who were hardest hit by COVID were the poorer people.
Saya tidak tahu waktu kejadian COVID seperti apa di sini, tapi kalau di Amerika, yang paling terdampak adalah orang-orang miskin.
Okay, because the people who had more money, if they had a second home, they'd go to their second home, or instead of going to work, they would stay home and they could work from home. So, you know, it protected them more from the illness.
Karena orang-orang yang memiliki uang, mungkin mereka memiliki rumah kedua di mana mereka bisa mengungsi di sana, atau mungkin yang bekerja kantoran, mereka bisa kerja dari rumah.
But the people who were poorer, they had to go to work, yeah, and they often had service jobs. So they were the people who drove trucks to transport the groceries to the grocery store, the people who stocked the shelves, the people who checked people out at the grocery store, the people who cooked food in restaurants, all, you know, these kinds of people who had to work very directly with the public. They were the ones that were hardest hit because they were exposed to COVID.
Sedangkan beberapa orang jadi sangat terdampak karena mereka tidak memiliki pilihan, mereka terpaksa harus bekerja, terutama kalau mereka bekerja di bidang pelayanan. Contohnya jika mereka harus mengemudi truk untuk mengantarkan sayur-sayur ke supermarket, atau mungkin bekerja di restoran, mereka tidak ada pilihan.
Yeah. So if you think about things like that, you see that they're not fair. And, you know, when we feel like we're on the oppressed side, then we speak up and we say it's not fair. But when we are on the upper side and have everything, then we don't say, oh, it's not fair.
Kadang-kadang saat kita merenungkan hal-hal seperti ini, baru kita bisa melihat ketidakadilan. Terkadang kita hanya teriak, ini tidak adil kalau kita sedang ada di bawah. Sedangkan kalau kita sedang di atas, kita tidak pernah teriak, ini tidak adil.
Mm-hmm. But the thing about generosity is if we care about others, because we see everybody wants happiness and freedom from suffering equally, then when we give something to people who don't have as much as we have, then we feel happy.
Karena sifat kemurah hatian ini sangat baik, karena pada saat kita memberikan kepada orang lain, kita juga otomatis bisa merasakan kebahagiaan.
Okay. So, you know, generosity is something that when we do with a kind heart, you know, then we feel happy and we are making other people happy.
Kemurah hatian ini contohnya adalah pada saat kita melakukan sesuatu atau memberikan sesuatu kepada orang lain, tidak hanya orang lain yang bahagia, kita juga merasa bahagia.
When I was teaching in Mexico, I stayed at one family's house. They had quite a large house, and they had different people who helped work in the house. And of course, the people, the maids and so forth, were from poor families.
Suatu kali saya mengajar, pergi ke Meksiko untuk mengajar, kemudian saya menetap di sebuah rumah, di mana di rumah itu banyak sekali orang-orang yang datang untuk membantu, dan mereka dari keluarga-keluarga miskin.
Okay, but what the mother of the house did is she made sure that the people who worked for her went to school, and she paid the school fees so that those people would get an education, and then they wouldn't have to work in those kind of jobs their whole life.
Ibu pemilik rumah ini baik sekali. Dia memastikan bahwa semua pekerja yang bekerja di rumahnya itu mendapatkan pendidikan yang layak. Kenapa? Supaya generasi berikutnya tidak harus bekerja seperti itu lagi.
And she did this. There was no law telling her, nobody making her do this. It was just by the goodness of her own heart. And I thought that was so beautiful.
Dia melakukan ini bukan karena paksaan atau karena hukum, tapi karena dia memiliki hati yang baik. Dan menurut saya itu indah sekali.
Yeah, because there are so many people who are intelligent, but they don't have the resources to go to school.
Karena sebenarnya banyak orang-orang yang pintar, tapi mereka tidak memiliki dananya untuk bisa mendapatkan pendidikan yang layak.
Yeah, and then all of us lose out when those people can't use their intelligence and contribute goodness to the rest of society.
Pada akhirnya sebenarnya kita semua yang rugi, karena orang-orang pintar ini tidak dapat mendapatkan pendidikan, jadinya mereka tidak bisa berkontribusi kepada masyarakat.
Yeah, so I was quite grateful to her.
Saya sangat berterima kasih kepadanya.
Yeah, because I know in my own family, when my grandparents immigrated to America, they were completely poor. Yeah, and my dad was the first generation born in the States, and so his whole thing was to support the family, and he did that very well, lifting the whole family out of poverty. But it's because he had the chance to go to school.
Keluarga saya datang dari sebenarnya awalnya itu mereka miskin, jadi kakek nenek saya migrasi ke Amerika, dan ayah saya adalah putra yang pertama yang lahir di Amerika, dan dia berusaha sebaik-baiknya untuk bisa memperbaiki kualitas hidup keluarga kita. Tapi dia beruntung karena mendapatkan kesempatan untuk bisa sekolah.
Okay, so there's many things when we practice generosity, many kind of material things we can give.
Jadi untuk menerapkan praktek kemurah hati yang kedermawanan ini, kita bisa memulai dari memberikan dalam bentuk materi.
Yeah. Now sometimes we may become a little bit stingy.
Kadang-kadang tapi kita suka pelit ya.
Yeah, and not really want to give.
Dan tidak ingin memberi.
Because we're afraid if I give, then I won't have it.
Karena takutnya kalau saya memberi, saya jadi tidak punya lagi barang itu.
And so often, we don't even use the thing now or need it now, but we're afraid maybe in 5 years or 10 years, we may need it, so better not give it.
Padahal sebenarnya kadang-kadang benda itu tidak kita butuhkan, tapi kadang-kadang kita berpikir, mungkin nanti akan kepake 5 tahun lagi, 10 tahun lagi, padahal tidak kita butuhkan.
Okay. Now, some of us, or some of you, may have closets full of stuff.
Beberapa dari kita mungkin punya lemari yang penuh dengan barang-barang.
Yeah, I see some people reacting.
Beberapa orang bereaksi.
Who has closets full of stuff, much of it that you've probably even forgotten is there.
Jadi kadang lemari kita penuh dengan barang-barang yang beberapa bahkan mungkin kita sendiri lupa memiliki barang-barang itu.
Yeah. Oh, one person raised their hand. I see.
Ada satu yang angkat tangan.
Okay. 2 people.
2.
Okay. Yeah, somehow. Yeah. So when I was teaching about this in the States to one class, I gave people a homework assignment, and I said, you had to go back to your house and clean out one closet or one drawer. Yeah. So no, I'm not saying clean out the whole house, but just one closet or one set of drawers, and everything that you haven't used in a year, because you've gone through all the 4 seasons and you haven't needed it. So everything you haven't used, then put it in a bag and take it to a charity.
Biasanya saat saya mengajarkan tentang kemurahatian ini, saya memberikan PR kepada orang-orang yang mendengarkan. PR-nya adalah saat kamu pulang ke rumah, kamu cek lemari kamu, ya, kosongkan, boleh 1 lemari atau 1 laci, cari barang-barang yang sudah lama tidak digunakan, kemudian masukkan semua ke dalam sebuah kotak lalu disumbangkan.
Okay, it's not a difficult homework assignment, is it?
Ini PR yang nggak sulit kan?
Oh, you look pained. So a week went by, the next week, yeah, then I said, okay, what happened? How did you do?
Kemudian pekan berikutnya saya akan menanyakan gimana mengerjakan PR-nya.
Yeah, so one person said, well, I was really busy this week, I couldn't do the homework.
Ada yang bilang, saya sibuk banget, saya nggak sempat ngerjain PR-nya.
Okay. Another person said, yeah, I started to do it, and then I was cleaning out a chest of drawers, and I found a T-shirt that I had forgotten that I had. Yeah, and it was a T-shirt I bought when I was on vacation in another country. So I saw the T-shirt that I had forgotten I even owned it, but once I saw it, it brought back so many memories of my vacation that I just couldn't give it away.
Lalu ada satu orang lagi yang menceritakan, iya saya sudah mengerjakan PR-nya, saat membersihkan lemari itu saya ketemu sebuah kaos. Memang sudah lama nggak saya gunakan, tapi kaos itu saya beli di luar negeri. Dan pada saat melihat kaos itu, saya langsung terkenang semua kenangan-kenangan manis pada saat mengunjungi negara itu. Jadi saya nggak tega untuk menyumbangkan kaos itu.
And then another person said, yeah, I cleaned out the closet, I got the stuff in a bag, I put the bag by the front door, and then I just forgot to put it in the car.
Okay. Ya, ada juga yang mengatakan, udah saya beresin lemarinya, udah saya masukin ke dalam tas, kemudian tasnya itu udah saya taruh di depan rumah, tapi saya lupa untuk masukin tas itu ke dalam mobil.
Yeah, and another person said, oh, I put my bag in the car in the trunk, and then I forgot that I had it, so I never got it to a charity.
Ada juga yang bilang, saya ingat masukin tasnya ke dalam mobil, tapi abis itu saya lupa untuk sumbangin barang-barang itu.
Yeah. So I said, really? Yeah.
Jadi
who's telling the truth?
respon saya cuma, beneran emangnya, siapa yang sebenarnya berbohong ini?
When I lived in India, yeah, I was really poor. I didn't have very much money at all.
Saat saya pernah tinggal di India dan pada saat itu saya tidak punya uang sedikit pun.
But when I walked to the market from where I lived, there were some lepers in the community. And so they were always on the roadside and I would see them. And when you live in a community with lepers, you know the lepers, And so they would have their bowls out there and I would be on my way to the market, and it would only cost hardly just a few pennies to give them enough money for a cup of tea, but I couldn't bring myself to do that.
Pada saat saya tinggal di India itu, saat saya sedang berjalan ke toko gitu ya, di sana ada komunitas orang-orang lepra yang duduk di pinggir jalan dan mereka punya mangkok untuk itu. Dan tapi saat itu saya tidak bisa memberikan uang kepada mereka.
So here are these people, you've seen lepers, you know, no hands, no legs.
Kita tahu ya orang-orang lepra ya, mereka tidak punya tangan, tidak punya kaki.
Yeah, they're ostracized from society. And I was receiving teachings at the time from my teacher, who of course was talking about the perfection of generosity.
Ya, jadi mereka terasing dari komunitasnya dan pada saat itu saya diajari oleh guru saya untuk mempraktekkan kemurah hatian.
So I would walk past the beggars, the lepers, and I would not give them anything because I said, if I give them even a few pennies, you know, so they could have a cup of tea, then I won't have that. But at the same time, I was telling myself, oh, it's okay not to give, you don't have so much. I was also in the back of my mind hearing my teacher talk about the benefits of generosity and how Bodhisattvas were so generous. So I had a lot of internal conflict.
Jadi pada saat itu saya tidak ingin memberikan uang kepada mereka, padahal sebenarnya hanya butuh 100-200 rupiah saja, mereka bisa membeli teh gitu ya. Sedangkan pada saat yang sama saya bisa mendengar suara guru saya di kepala saya dan bilang, ayo kamu harus murah hati. Jadi saya perang batin di dalam saat itu.
So if I had been more generous and given them something, I would have felt a lot happier. A few pennies would not have put me out that much, yeah. But just to watch the mind that is like so tight, you know. This is my tissue, you can't have any.
Sebenarnya pada saat itu jika saya memberikan kepada mereka, pasti saya akan lebih bahagia. Tapi kadang-kadang kita bisa melihat ya, mengamati pikiran kita, di mana kita sangat melekat pada sesuatu yang kita miliki.
Okay. But, you know, the way of thinking of a miserly mind, that if I give, I won't have it, yeah, when I need it. This, if you understand the law of karma, then you see that thinking like that is totally wrong, yeah. Because the more stingy, the stingier you are, the more you're creating the karma to live in poverty, because your mind is so tight like that.
Saat kita belajar hukum karma, seharusnya kita memahami bahwa pada saat kita memiliki pola pikir seperti itu, justru itu adalah karma buruk, karena malah akan mengakibatkan kita untuk terlahir di menjadi orang yang miskin karena kita saking melekatnya dengan materi.
Whereas Nagarjuna, one of the great Mahayana sages in India, he said generosity is the cause of wealth.
Sedangkan seorang guru dari tradisi Mahayana justru mengajarkan bahwa kemurah hatian itu adalah sumber dari kekayaan.
And if you think about it, it makes sense, doesn't it?
Jika kita renungkan masuk akal kan?
Yeah, if you give, people are going to reciprocate and you'll have wealth.
Karena pada saat kita memberi, kita akan menerima dan kita akan bisa mendapat kekayaan.
Yeah. But so often we still have to fight against that miserly mind.
Tapi kadang-kadang kita harus berperang dengan pola pikir yang pelit ini.
Okay. So let me see what else we have here. Okay. So just some tips about giving is once you've made up your mind to give something, yeah, make sure you give it. Give it as soon as you can. Don't just kind of keep it there, because after a while you'll either forget or you'll change your mind.
Saya akan memberikan tips kepada kalian menyangkut pemberian ini. Jika kita sudah memutuskan untuk memberikan sesuatu, langsung berikan. Karena kadang-kadang kita bisa lupa dan atau ujung-ujungnya kita tidak memberikan barang itu.
And if somebody else gives you something to give to a third person or to a charity, make sure you give that.
Atau kadang-kadang kalau kita dititipkan oleh seseorang, tolong berikan ini tolong disumbangkan, pastikan kita benar-benar menyumbangkan barang itu.
Yeah. So lots of times when somebody is going on pilgrimage in India, their friends will give them some money and say, make offerings at the Bodh Gaya stupa for me, or light candles at Sarnath, where the Buddha gave his first teachings. So they'll give you something to make offerings when you go on pilgrimage.
Kadang-kadang pada saat ada orang-orang yang pergi berziarah ke India, beberapa temannya kadang-kadang suka menitipkan, tolong danakan ini, mungkin di patung Bodh Gaya gitu ya.
Yeah, so make sure you give those things.
Pastikan bahwa jika dititipkan, pastikan kamu benar-benar memberinya.
Yeah, so if somebody, let's say, gives you a whole bunch of fruit and says, offer this at the temple, but, so the fruit's sitting in your car and you're hungry and you say, well, let's just have a little bit and then I'll buy something else to replace what I eat.
Contohnya jika ada orang yang menitipkan buah, tolong titip buah ini dan untuk persembahan di wihara. Kemudian kita taruh buahnya di mobil, terus kita lapar, kita makan, ujung-ujungnya kita nggak memberikan itu sebagai persembahan.
Yeah, that's kind of like stealing something that belongs to the Buddha or is destined for the Buddha.
Itu sama saja mencuri dari Buddha atau sesuatu yang harusnya menjadi milik Buddha.
Yeah. When I taught in Singapore years ago, we had a session on Sunday mornings, and so people would bring food and make offerings on the altar, and then after the session, when it was time for lunch, then they decided, oh, now it's time to take the offerings down from the altar. Yeah. And I thought, oh, that's very interesting, yeah? That just at the time that it's lunch, that's when they decide to take the offerings from the altar.
Saat saya mengajar di Singapura, ya di hari Minggu pagi, saya melihat sesuatu yang menarik sekali, di mana orang-orang datang dan membawa persembahannya di pagi hari dan menaruhnya di altar. Tapi begitu sudah jam makan siang, mereka langsung buru-buru ambil lagi persembahannya itu dari altar.
So I asked them, did you really offer that food to the Buddha? Or did you just put it on the altar until it was lunchtime and then you took it away?
Lalu saya menanyakan kepada mereka, kamu benar-benar ingin memberikan persembahan kepada Buddha atau cuma mau taruh sementara aja di altar sampai jam makan siang?
Yeah. When we make food offerings and different offerings on the altar, yeah, we should give something, like if you buy a bunch of fruit and you're going to save some for your family and offer some on the altar, you should give the good fruit to the Buddha, yeah? Don't keep the good fruit for yourself and then give the bruised fruit on the altar.
Jika kita ingin memberikan persembahan, contohnya jika kita mau memberikan persembahan buah-buahan, pastikan yang kita pilih buah-buah yang terbaik itu yang kita persembahkan di altar. Jangan sebaliknya ya, pilih buah-buah yang terbaik lalu itu yang disimpan untuk keluarga kita.
Yeah. So making offerings every morning is a really nice practice. It doesn't take very long. If you have a shrine in your home, an image of the Buddha, a text representing the Dharma, and then a figure of a bodhisattva or an arhat representing the sangha, then every morning you can offer food or lights or water, whatever you like. And, it doesn't take very long, but it makes you pause and really think of the qualities of the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. And then when you give, you're creating, that link with them.
Jadi memberikan persembahan di altar setiap hari itu sebuah praktek yang sangat bagus sekali. Kita bisa melakukannya setiap pagi jika kita memiliki altar, di mana altar itu ada yang mewakili Buddha, Dharma, dan Sangha. Pada saat setiap pagi kita meluangkan waktu sejenak untuk meletakkan persembahan itu adalah momen di mana kita dapat merenungkan dan itu adalah momen di mana kita dapat terkoneksi dengan Buddha, Dharma, dan Sangha.
Okay. And if you have children or grandchildren, this is something very nice to do with them.
Jika kita memiliki anak-anak, dapat kita lakukan bersama mereka.
I had a friend, and she had her little girl was, I don't know, how old are they at this age? Maybe 4 or 5. And every morning, she would give her little girl some kind of snack and say, offer this to the Buddha. So the little girl would offer the snack to the Buddha, and then my friend would give the little girl a snack and say, this is an offering from the Buddha to you.
Saya memiliki seorang teman itu punya anak, punya anak perempuan berumur 4 tahun, lalu orang itu, si ibu itu selalu tiap pagi memberikan snack dan bilang, ayo kamu memberikan persembahan ini kepada Buddha. Lalu anak kecil itu melakukannya, kemudian si ibu itu memberikan snack kepada si anaknya dan bilang, ini persembahan dari Buddha untuk kamu.
Okay. And that little girl grew up and she was a Buddhist. Yeah.
Lalu anak itu tumbuh berkembang menjadi seorang Buddhis.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see what else we have. Yeah, so if you're generous, it creates the karma for wealth. It creates the karma to meet holy beings. Yeah.
Jika kita menerapkan kemurah hatian ini, kita menciptakan karma untuk menjadi makmur atau kaya, dan selain itu juga terhubung dengan makhluk suci.
Okay, and once you give something, it's no longer yours. Sometimes when people give their friend a gift, maybe it's holiday time or birthday or something, you give a friend a gift, and then after that, you keep watching your friend to see if they're using the gift you gave them. And if they aren't, you feel offended.
Saat kita memberikan pemberian kepada orang lain, benda itu sudah bukan milik kita lagi. Kadang-kadang kita ada orang yang memberikan hadiah kepada temannya, lalu kadang-kadang mengamati temannya itu pakai atau enggak pemberiannya. Lalu kalau temannya nggak pakai pemberiannya itu, kemudian dia tersinggung.
Yeah, so you haven't really given it. You're keeping track of it.
Jadi kalau memberi sudah tidak usah dipantau lagi pemberian itu.
Okay. One time when I was living in India, I made some text covers. When our Dharma texts, we often wrap them in brocade or in some kind of nice cloth. So I made some covers like that for one of my teachers.
Sorry, made what?
They're book covers.
Oh, book covers. Okay.
Yeah, for the text. Sometimes the Tibetans have long text, sometimes like a book.
Okay.
So you cover it with pretty cloth.
Okay. Waktu saya tinggal di India, saya kadang-kadang membuat sarung untuk naskah-naskah Buddhis untuk melindunginya.
Okay, so I spent many days hand stitching these book covers.
Saya menghabiskan waktu berhari-hari untuk menjahit sarung-sarung buku ini.
Yeah, And then I had an appointment with my teacher, so I went in and I offered these book covers to him.
Saat saya menemui guru saya, kemudian saya memberikan persembahan ini kepada beliau.
You know, thinking that, oh, he'll really be able to use these, he'll like them, they were very pretty.
Berharap beliau akan menghargainya dan menggunakannya sehari-hari.
Yeah, and then I thought, oh, I created so much merit making offering to my Lama, to my Guru.
Dan merasa bahwa saya telah melakukan sebuah jasa kebaikan karena memberikan persembahan kepada guru saya.
Okay. Then after I left, then another monk came in. This one was a very well-respected scholar and practitioner, and he came in to see my teacher.
Lalu setelah saya pergi, kemudian ada seorang biksu ini yang sangat terkenal, dia datang menemui guru saya.
And when he left, I saw him leave. He was carrying the book covers that I had just given to my teacher.
Dan saya lihat pada saat biksu itu pergi, dia sedang membawa sarung buku yang saya tadi berikan kepada guru saya.
So that was a very good teaching for me, that when you give, it no longer belongs to you. You have no say-so over it.
Ini menjadi pembelajaran yang penting sekali untuk saya, bahwa pada saat sudah memberikan sesuatu kepada orang lain, kita lupakan saja.
Okay. However, as monastics, we have precepts that if people give us a gift and tell us to use it for a certain purpose, we have to use it for that purpose. Yeah, if we can't or we don't want to, we have to go back to the donor and explain why we can't use their gift for the purpose they designated and ask their permission to use it for another purpose.
Jadi ada tradisi, tapi dalam ajaran saya, di mana ada sila yang mengharuskan saya untuk menggunakan benda-benda yang didanakan oleh umat. Jika memang saya tidak bisa menggunakan itu, saya harus menemui umat itu dan mengembalikannya dan menjelaskan kenapa saya tidak bisa menggunakannya.
Yeah, so we have several precepts about how we handle offerings that are made.
Jadi ada beberapa sila yang mengatur tentang bagaimana kita menggunakan pemberian-pemberian ini.
Okay, so if somebody like makes you an offering and says use this for food, you can't go and take it and buy a nice, soft, cozy blanket with it.
Jadi jika kita ada yang memberikan kita, gitu ya, misalnya selimut, kita tidak bisa pergi dan membeli selimut yang lain.
Yeah. So even if you're cold, you can't buy the blanket unless you go and ask the donor's permission.
Ya, kecuali kita bisa meminta untuk umat itu memberikan pemberian itu.
Okay. What else can I tell you about that? I have lots of stories about giving. Yeah. Should I tell them the maroon cashmere sweater story? Okay. So this story begins in Japan. I was invited to Japan to teach, and the people I was staying with gave me a maroon cashmere sweater.
Saya punya cerita, pada saat saya sedang di Jepang, ada seorang umat yang memberikan kepada saya sebuah sweater marun yang terbuat dari bahan kashmir atau sutra.
Yeah. So you probably don't know what cashmere is. It's a kind of wool that is really soft, and a sweater made of it, it keeps you warm, it feels really nice on your skin.
Maaf, bukan sutra ya. Jadi kashmir ini sebenarnya adalah bahan dari wool dan sangat hangat sekali dan nyaman sekali saat digunakan.
Yeah, and as monastics, it's sometimes difficult to find sweaters in our color.
Jadi pada saat kita di biara, susah sekali untuk menemukan sweater atau baju hangat dengan warna yang sama dengan warna jubah ini, warna marun.
Yeah, it depends what color is in fashion that year.
Tergantung dari lagi fashionnya apa
Yeah,
di tahun itu.
and then you have to find a sweater that doesn't have any designs or ornaments or slogans or anything.
Selain itu juga saya juga harus pastikan bahwa baju hangat itu tidak ada gambar desain tertentu.
Yeah, so these people gave me a maroon, perfect color, cashmere, so soft, warm sweater.
Jadi saya dapat pemberian ini baju hangat yang sangat mulus ya, yang sangat nyaman sekali digunakan dan warnanya juga sudah sesuai.
Yeah, I really like this sweater.
Dan saya sangat suka sekali dengan sweater ini.
And I have to admit, I had some attachment for it.
Saya harus mengakui bahwa saya mulai melekat dengan benda ini.
Okay. So then, you know, as it happened, later on, I was invited to Ukraine. Let me think. Yes, Ukraine, to teach. So I was actually doing teachings in a lot of the former Soviet countries. And so I had my maroon cashmere sweater with me because it was early spring there. It was quite cold.
Dan kemudian saya pergi ke Ukraina, di mana saat itu musimnya udah mulai dingin, jadi saya mengenakan sweater favorit saya itu.
Okay. So I was traveling with a translator, and we had taken a train to Kiev, and we were going to take the train the following night to Donetsk. You may have heard these cities, they've been in the news the last few months, okay, getting bombed. But so my friend, the translator, had a friend in Kiev. So we arrived there at the train station in the early morning. He called his friend. She didn't have any advance notice that we were coming. And she said, okay, come over and spend the day with me while you're here.
Saat itu saya bepergian bersama seorang penerjemah, jadi saya naik kereta ke Kiev untuk melanjutkannya lagi ke kota lain, Donetsk. Itu mungkin kita pernah mendengar kota-kota ini, saat ini sering masuk di berita ya, karena pemboman itu. Lalu penerjemah ini memiliki seorang teman perempuan, dan dia menerima kita, padahal waktu itu kita tidak ada pemberitahuan sama sekali, tapi dia tetap menerima kita.
So his friend's name was Sasha. She was a young woman. She didn't have much money, but because we were guests, she brought out the really nice food.
Perempuan ini namanya Sasha. Sebenarnya dia tidak memiliki banyak uang, tapi karena dia baik sekali, dia menerima kita dengan hangat dan memberikan kita banyak makanan.
Yeah. So really nice food, it didn't mean really nice food. It meant average food because she didn't have much money.
Sebenarnya makanannya itu tidak terlalu mewah karena ia tidak memiliki terlalu banyak uang.
So she gave us breakfast and lunch and dinner. We spent the day with her. It was really nice.
Dan dia mempersembahkan kita, menyuguhkan kita makanan pagi, siang, dan malam, dan kita menghabiskan waktu sama dia. Dia baik sekali.
She was just very happy, very generous.
Dia orangnya sangat bahagia dan sangat murah hati.
Okay, so in the evening it was time to go to the train station for us to take the train to Donetsk.
Dan tibalah saatnya di malam hari kita harus naik kereta untuk menuju ke kota Donetsk.
Okay, so we get on the tram to go to the train station, and Sasha is about the same size as I am.
Lalu kita jadi naik tram untuk menuju ke stasiun kereta, dan Sasha ini ukuran tubuhnya sama dengan saya.
So I had the absolute crazy idea that I should give my maroon cashmere sweater to Sasha.
Lalu saya memiliki ide yang gila ini, di mana saya kepikiran untuk memberikan sweater favorit saya ini kepada dia.
And as soon as that thought arose in my mind, inside there was another thought that said, no.
Begitu muncul keinginan untuk memberi ini, langsung muncul pikiran lain yang bilang tidak boleh.
Okay. And then I said, oh, children, come on, give it to her. She can use it. Ukraine is very cold weather. And as soon as I thought that, absolutely not.
Jadi ada pergolakan batin di dalam saya, di mana yang satu bilang, ayolah kasihlah sweaternya, kan Ukraina itu dingin, pasti kepake sama dia. Yang satu lagi bilang, nggak boleh.
Yeah. So we're on this tram. The translator and the Sasha are just chatting away, having a good time. I'm having a civil war.
Jadi di dalam tram itu, saat si penerjemah lagi asik ngobrol dengan Sasha, di dalam saya sedang ada peperangan.
Give her the sweater. No. Come on, just pull it out of your suitcase. No, I can't. The tram is moving. Okay, then when you get to the train station, you're not moving. Pull the sweater out of your suitcase. No, because at that time we'll be getting on the train.
Jadi peperangan batinnya itu seperti, ayo kasih sweaternya, nggak bisa, ini tramnya lagi jalan, nggak bisa buka kopernya. Ya udah kalau gitu tunggu nanti aja, kalau udah sampai stasiun kereta baru buka. Kemudian jawabannya nggak bisa, soalnya kan langsung harus buru-buru naik kereta lagi, nggak sempet.
And well, okay, when you get on the train, just open the suitcase, give her the sweater. Look, the train's gonna be moving. If I do that, and she gets off the train, it'll be moving, and she'll get hurt. I can't give her the sweater.
Gimana kalau kasih sweaternya itu pada saat udah naik kereta gitu kan ya. Terus tapi jawabannya adalah nggak bisa karena saat itu pasti keretanya lagi berjalan cepat. Nanti kalau keretanya cepat, Sashanya turun kemudian terluka, saya nggak mau dia terluka.
So we get to the train station.
Jadi sampailah di stasiun kereta.
Sasha says, wait a minute. And she goes off for a few minutes. And she comes back with some pastry so that we'll have food to eat on the train ride.
Lalu di stasiun kereta itu sebelum kita naik keretanya, Sasha bilang tunggu sebentar ya. Kemudian dia datang dan memberikan kita kue-kue supaya kita bisa makan di atas kereta.
So I'm just going, just children, just give her the sweater.
Saya langsung bilang, Chodron, langsung kasih aja sweaternya.
So finally we're on the train. I pull the suitcase out, I get the sweater, and I give it to her. And her face lights up. She's really happy. Oh, wow. I almost gave up the opportunity to make somebody really happy.
Jadi akhirnya saya memberikan sweaternya dan pada saat itu juga wajah Sasha itu langsung terlihat cerah dan berseri-seri. Dan saat itu saya sadar bahwa hampir saja saya melewatkan kesempatan untuk membuat seseorang menjadi bahagia.
Okay, so she gets off the train. The train takes us to Donetsk. We spend a week there.
Lalu Sasha turun dari keretanya, kemudian kita pergi ke kota Donetsk dan kita meluangkan waktu seminggu di sana.
Okay, and then we get on the train to come back to Kiev.
Lalu kita kembali pulang ke Kiev.
So I just remembered another story about the train ride back from Kiev. So I'll put that story in, and I'll tell you the end of the sweater story in a minute.
Saya jadi teringat lagi ada sebuah cerita pada saat kita dalam perjalanan di atas keretanya itu, tapi saya simpan dulu, habis ini saya ceritain.
Okay, so the second story is also a story of generosity, of somebody on the train who wants to give me a gift.
Ini juga cerita tentang kemurah hatian di mana ada seseorang di kereta yang ingin memberikan pemberian kepada saya.
Okay, so it was a sleeper train, So we had slept in a compartment with a few other people. And when we woke up in the morning, two of the men who were sleeping in the compartment, I had a cold, you know, and they said, "Oh, you're not feeling well." And I said, "Yeah, I have a cold."
Itu keretanya adalah kereta yang ada tempat tidurnya, dan di sana di kompartemen atau di gerbong yang sama ada dua orang pria di sana. Dan pada saat itu saya sedang pilek. Lalu mereka melihat saya dan bilang, "Oh, kamu sedang sakit ya?" Dan saya bilang, "Iya, saya lagi nggak enak badan."
Okay, so these people, these two guys, were, you know, they had a kind intention to help somebody who wasn't feeling well, so they offered me vodka.
Dua orang ini, karena dia melihat saya sedang tidak enak badan, dia menawarkan saya vodka.
Yeah, you know vodka?
Tahu vodka kan ya?
And they had started drinking vodka as soon as they got up in the morning. And they were practicing generosity and wanted to give me a cup of vodka first thing in the morning on an empty stomach.
Mereka mulai minum vodka ini pagi-pagi sekali, dan mereka mau menyuguhkan saya secangkir vodka bahkan sebelum saya sarapan.
I said, "Thank you very much for your kind offer, but I don't drink."
Saya bilang terima kasih banyak untuk pemberiannya, tapi saya tidak boleh minum alkohol.
And they said, "But you're sick. This will make you feel better. Please have some."
Tapi kamu kan sakit, ini pasti akan bikin kamu jadi merasa lebih enak. Tolonglah, ayo ambil pemberian ini.
I'm sorry, I'm a nun. I have a vow not to drink. That doesn't matter. You're sick.
Saya jelaskan bahwa saya seorang biksuni, tidak boleh minum alkohol. Mereka tetap maksa. Tapi kan kamu lagi sakit, kamu harus minum ini biar enak badan.
So I spent most of the train ride back, you know, saying, "No, I will not accept vodka."
Sepanjang perjalanan saya berdebat sama mereka dan mereka tetap memaksa.
Okay, so now we're going back to the sweater story because we arrived back in Kiev.
Kita lanjut kembali ke cerita sweater itu ya. Sekarang kita tiba kembali di kota Kiev.
And who's waiting for us at the train station but Sasha?
Siapa yang menunggu di stasiun kereta? Sasha.
Okay, the weather's changed. It's a warm spring day.
Dan saat itu musimnya telah berganti menjadi musim yang hangat.
And what is Sasha wearing in the warm weather?
Jadi tebak kira-kira Sasha lagi mengenakan apa di musim panas itu?
My former maroon cashmere sweater.
Bekas sweater saya.
And she was so happy wearing it. She was just, I mean, it was too hot to wear it, but she loved it, you know. And I just was thinking, my goodness, like I fought this whole civil war inside. And I, like I said, I almost passed up the opportunity to make somebody really, really happy. And so that taught me a big lesson.
Meskipun itu musim panas, tapi Sasha tetap mengenakan sweater itu dan dia terlihat sangat bahagia. Dan saat itu saya tersadar, astaga, hampir saja saya melewatkan kesempatan untuk membahagiakan seseorang. Itu adalah pelajaran yang sangat berharga untuk saya.
Okay, so some of you might think the lesson I learned was when you travel, always have 2 maroon cashmere sweaters so you can give one away.
Mungkin di sini ada yang berpikir pelajarannya adalah pada saat berpergian punya 2 sweater yang berwarna marun itu supaya satunya bisa diberikan kepada orang lain.
Yeah, but no, that's not the lesson.
Pelajarannya bukan itu ya.
Okay. So, yeah, so, you know, generosity can be challenging, but when you really work with your miserly mind, then generosity, it makes you happy.
Sebenarnya mempraktekkan kemurah hatian ini memang sulit, tapi pada saat kita bisa mengendalikan pikiran kita yang pelit ini, kita akan merasakan kebahagiaan.
Okay. So when we practice generosity, it's important, don't expect a thank you.
Pada saat kita menerapkan kemurah hati ini, jangan pernah berharap diucapkan terima kasih.
And if you give somebody a gift, don't expect them to give you a gift back.
Saat kita memberikan pemberian kepada orang lain, jangan berharap orang lain itu akan memberikan pemberian juga kepada kita.
Yeah, because if you're expecting praise or appreciation, then, by somebody saying thank you or saying, oh, you're so generous, then, your generosity is contaminated.
Pada saat kita memberi, tapi sangat berharap untuk pujian atau ucapan terima kasih ini, sifat murah hati kita ini terkontaminasi.
Okay. So, similarly, if you give to the temple, don't expect them to name the building after you.
Sama halnya saat kita berdana kepada wihara, jangan berharap nama kita akan tertera di wihara tersebut.
Yeah, some people give, so that, now they'll name the building after me, then everybody will know how rich I am, because I gave a lot of money. They'll know how generous I am. I'll have a really good reputation. And now, because the building is named after me, for so many generations in the future, people will think of me with so much gratitude.
Jadi ada beberapa orang mungkin yang pada saat mereka berdana, kemudian berharap namanya itu kemudian akan, gedungnya itu akan diberikan nama sesuai nama orang itu, lalu kemudian berharap, oh jadi orang-orang jadi pada tahu nih, saya sekaya apa, saya ini orangnya kaya, saya seorang ini murah hati, dan generasi-generasi berikutnya akan mengingat nama saya sebagai orang yang sangat murah hati.
Yeah. Now sometimes the temple may want to make a plaque with the names of the donors, but that's coming from the temple's wish. It's not coming because somebody expected that.
Kadang-kadang saat kita berdana kepada wihara, mungkin wihara memutuskan untuk menaruh nama kita ya di label-label itu seperti yang di sini. Itu nggak apa-apa karena itu adalah keputusan wihara, bukan kita yang meminta wihara untuk melakukannya.
Yeah. But I should warn you, at our monastery, we don't name buildings after people. We don't give plaques with people's names on them. Yeah.
Tapi,
sorry folks. If you want to make a donation to us, all you're going to get is the happiness you feel from being generous.
saya ingatkan ya, di wihara saya, jika ada orang yang berdana, kita tidak akan menuliskan namanya di gedung atau di patung-patung Buddha ini. Satu-satunya yang kalian akan dapatkan jika berdana adalah perasaan berbahagia, karena kalian telah menerapkan sifat murah hati.
Yeah, so this was my decision, and I think the community seconded it. And the reason I made that decision is, because, as I said before, when I was started out, I didn't have very much money. And I saw that the people who gave big donations got a lot of perks. And I thought, that doesn't feel quite comfortable. So I said, in our monastery, we want people to give out of the goodness of their heart, not because they're going to get a perk.
Ya, kenapa saya mengambil keputusan seperti ini? Karena saya ingin pada saat orang-orang melakukan pemberian itu benar-benar karena mereka tulus ingin murah hati, bukan karena mengharapkan mendapatkan imbalan apapun.
Yeah. Okay. Then let's go on to talk about the generosity of protection.
Sekarang kita akan berbicara mengenai murah hati, yaitu pemberian perlindungan.
Okay. So this one involves, protecting people who are in danger or protecting any kind of animal in danger.
Ini adalah wujud pemberian perlindungan kepada orang-orang yang membutuhkan perlindungan, baik itu orang-orang ataupun binatang, hewan.
So it can range from, you see there's a bucket of water outdoors and there's some insects drowning in it. So you gently pull the insects out and rescue them.
Contohnya jika kita melihat sebuah genangan air dan ada serangga yang terperangkap di air itu, kita bisa membantunya.
Yeah. Or some animals are about to be killed so that people can eat their flesh. And instead what you do is you buy the animal and set it free or take it home and keep it at home.
Atau jika ada hewan yang akan dibunuh untuk dimakan, kita bisa membelinya dan membebaskannya atau mungkin menyimpannya di rumah kita.
So one day I walked into the Dharma Center in Delhi, and there were 2 chickens walking around.
Suatu hari saya berjalan ke sebuah pusat Dharma Center di Delhi, dan saya melihat ada 2 ekor ayam yang sedang berjalan.
Yeah, so can you imagine 2 chickens inside your building here walking around?
Apakah kita pernah melihat ada 2 ekor ayam di dalam wihara?
Yeah. So I said, how did the chickens come to live here? And the people said, my teacher, had, they were about to be killed for somebody's meal, and he bought the chickens and took them back to the Dharma Center and liberated them there, and so they were gonna live long lives for chickens.
Jadi rupanya guru saya dulu pernah melihat 2 ekor ayam ini yang akan disembelih, kemudian membelinya dan memelihara mereka di dalam lingkungan wihara itu supaya mereka memiliki umur panjang.
Yeah. Our neighbors down the hill from the monastery, our previous neighbors, they had some sheep and they were going to slaughter their sheep to eat. And when we heard about this, then we paid them for the sheep, but we couldn't put them up by the monastery because we didn't have the kind of grass that they needed,
Ada juga tetangga kita yang memiliki beberapa domba atau kambing gitu ya, yang akan disembelih, kemudian kita mengambil mereka, tapi sayangnya di wihara kita tidak bisa memeliharanya karena kita tidak ada ladang rumput.
Yeah, but we arranged for them to be taken to a kind of place where animals can live, just until the end of their natural life.
Jadi mereka dibawa ke sebuah tempat di mana binatang-binatang itu dapat hidup panjang.
Yeah, what do they call it? Yeah, like a shelter or something like that.
Ya, seperti animal shelter atau tempat-tempat perlindungan hewan.
And another example of somebody practicing the generosity of protection, a couple of years ago, there was, it was a few years ago, in New York, they have subways, and somebody had fallen over the edge, the deck where you wait for the subway to come. They had fallen over and they were on the subway track and a train was coming.
Ada cerita lagi tentang murah hati ini, di mana dulu beberapa tahun yang lalu di New York, di stasiun kereta bawah tanah, ada kejadian di mana ada orang yang jatuh dari pijakannya dan dia jatuh ke atas rel kereta.
And one man was standing, on the side, he saw this person lying right where the train was going to go. And without a thought, he jumped onto the train tracks and lay on top of the person who had fallen, pushing that person down and with himself on top.
Lalu saat itu kereta sedang datang menuju ke orang itu, lalu ada seorang pria yang melihat kejadian itu, lalu dia langsung tanpa berpikir panjang, langsung lompat dan kemudian dia berbaring di atas orang itu untuk menutupi badan si orang yang jatuh itu.
And then the train came and went right over them, but because that man had pressed himself and the other person down, the train didn't harm either of them.
Karena orang itu melakukan itu pada saat keretanya datang, karena orangnya sedang menumpuk badannya ya di atas situnya, ternyata pada akhirnya kereta itu tidak bisa melindas mereka.
Yeah, so he had risked his own life to save that other person's life.
Jadi dia mengambil resiko atas nyawa sendiri untuk menolong orang lain.
Okay, then the third kind of generosity is the generosity of love.
Lalu sifat murah hati yang ketiga adalah pemberian dalam bentuk kasih sayang.
Okay, so we often will encounter people who are upset, people who are depressed, people who are having personal problems or family problems. And so this is reaching out to those people and helping them.
Kadang-kadang kita menemui beberapa orang yang mengalami kesedihan atau depresi. Yang kita harus lakukan adalah kita mengulurkan tangan untuk berusaha membantu mereka.
So you have to, in those situations, figure out what it is, what can you do that will actually help that person.
Dalam situasi tersebut, kita harus berpikir apa yang bisa kita lakukan untuk bisa meringankan penderitaan orang-orang itu.
Okay, but because some people may want to be comforted.
Ada orang-orang yang butuh untuk dihibur.
Some people may not want to be comforted.
Beberapa orang mungkin tidak ingin dihibur.
So it may depend if you know the person or don't know them.
Kadang-kadang kita harus mengenal orang itu.
Yeah. But so you have to assess the situation and think, what can I give at this point? Sometimes it's your company. Sometimes it's a few words. Sometimes it's some tissue. You have to figure out what will really help that person.
Jadi kita harus bisa kira-kira membaca situasi, kira-kira yang dibutuhkan orang itu apa. Apakah kita menghibur mereka, menemani mereka, atau mungkin memberikan tisu kepada mereka.
What I've seen is that some people are, when they don't like to see sick people, it makes them queasy, it makes them afraid that they may become ill like that. So it's hard for them to extend love to people like that, who are ill, who need some help.
Ada beberapa orang yang takut untuk mengunjungi orang-orang yang sakit. Jadi mungkin agak sulit untuk mereka untuk menerapkan praktek ini.
Other people are more afraid of when somebody's showing a very strong emotion. Like if somebody's very sad and they're crying, some people just go, I don't know what to do, when they want to leave.
Ada juga beberapa orang yang merasa takut saat melihat orang lain menunjukkan emosi mereka. Seperti kalau ada orang yang lagi nangis gitu ya, orang itu langsung takut sendiri.
Okay. So sometimes this, the giving of love and support and encouragement can sometimes involve us stretching ourselves to go beyond what is really comfortable.
Jadi praktek memberikan kasih sayang ini kadang-kadang membutuhkan kita untuk melakukan lebih atau memberikan pengorbanan dari yang biasanya kita lakukan.
Yeah. So, for example, with the hostages that have just been released by Hamas, the Israeli hostages, I saw one thing on the news. There was a little girl. She was, I think, 4 years old. She was taken, without any family members. So she was there with, some neighbors. They took the, actually, apparently she wasn't going, they didn't take her, no, wait a minute. I thought, they did take her underground, and so she had been living underground in the Hamas tunnels for 50 days, this little girl.
Jadi saya baru melihat di berita ada seorang anak kecil yang dibebaskan, yaitu tahanan yang ditahan oleh Hamas ya, seorang gadis Israel yang berumur 4 tahun, dan dia ditahan selama 50 hari di bawah tanah oleh pasukan Hamas.
So when she was released, her mom had been killed by the terrorist attack, but when she saw her dad, she just ran right into his arms and he picked her up.
Lalu saat ia akhirnya dibebaskan, dia langsung buru-buru lari dan memeluk ayahnya, sedangkan ibunya sendiri sudah meninggal karena terbunuh oleh teroris ini.
But her dad said, when he was interviewed on the news, he said that when she talked, she could barely even whisper, because the whole time underground, whatever the guards told her was, be quiet. And so she was terrified to speak and couldn't even get above a very, very soft whisper.
Pada saat di interview, ayahnya bercerita bahwa si gadis kecil ini bahkan tidak bisa berucap. Ya, kalau ngomong pun juga suaranya kecil sekali. Ternyata karena pada saat dia sedang ditahan di bawah tanah itu, tentara-tentara Hamasnya itu selalu mengingatkan mereka untuk diam, untuk tenang. Jadi dia tidak berani untuk berucap.
So a child that's been traumatized that severely is going to need psychological help. She doesn't need a new bicycle.
Dalam kasus ini, seorang gadis kecil ini sudah mengalami trauma yang luar biasa. Jadi yang dia butuhkan adalah support secara emosional, bukan pemberian berupa hadiah seperti sepeda misalnya.
Yeah. So what she needs is just people being there for her, letting her know that she's safe.
Yang dia butuhkan adalah orang-orang di sekitarnya untuk memastikan bahwa dia merasa terlindungi.
Yeah. Maybe a stuffed animal to cuddle with. Yeah, that helps little kids.
I'm sorry, for
A stuffed animal.
Oh, stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
little kids.
Ya, mungkin
like that.
mungkin boneka ya, boneka yang halus yang bisa dipeluknya.
Okay, so this is an example of trying to fit our generosity to what their need is.
Ini adalah contoh di mana kita harus mengetahui pemberian kita yang dibutuhkan itu apa.
Okay, and then the fourth kind of generosity is the generosity of the Dharma.
Yang keempat adalah pemberian dalam bentuk dharma.
So that could be giving Dharma talks, writing books, translating, anything where you're making the Dharma available to people.
Contohnya apa? Misalnya memberikan wejangan, dharma talk, atau mungkin jadi penerjemah.
Okay. Very often temples have the practice of giving Dharma books for free distribution. So if you give money, to the publisher so that Dharma books can be given freely, that's also the generosity of the Dharma.
Contohnya pada saat kita berdana kepada wihara, lalu dananya itu digunakan untuk mencetak buku-buku yang disebarluaskan kepada orang banyak secara gratis, itu juga contoh pemberian dharma.
Yeah, and when you talk to your friends, you can teach them a lot of things that are Buddha's teachings that are also common sense. So you don't need to mention all sorts of fancy foreign words, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, samsara, nirvana, karma, to your friends who aren't Buddhists. You can just, give them some of the advice that you've heard when you've come to Dharma talks. They don't have to be Buddhist, but it's practical advice. It's common sense of how to deal with situations with kindness. So that kind of sharing with friends is also the generosity of the Dharma.
Contohnya kita bisa memberikan nasihat kepada teman kita yang mungkin sedang mengalami masalah, kita ingin membantu mereka, kita bisa memberikan nasihat kepada mereka berdasarkan ajaran Dharma yang kita dapatkan dari wejangan misalnya. Tapi kita sebenarnya tidak perlu menyebutkan kata-kata yang ada hubungannya dengan Buddhisme, misalnya karma atau Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. Tidak perlu, yang penting ajaran-ajaran yang praktikal yang bisa dapat mereka terapkan dan masuk akal untuk mereka.
Yeah, or you could give your friends some of the very small booklets for free distribution, or invite them to a Dharma talk.
Atau mungkin kita bisa memberikan mereka buku kecil ya yang mengajarkan Dharma, atau mungkin mengajak mereka sesekali datang untuk mengikuti wejangan Dharma.
Yeah, but when there's the book that's published and it says for non-Muslims only, follow that.
Non-Muslims only? So.
Yeah, because sometimes Dharma books, it's printed for non-Muslims only. In other words, don't give this book to any people who are Muslims. So if a book says that, then don't give the book to somebody who's Muslim.
Oke. Jadi terkadang-kadang ada buku yang tertulis non-Muslims only. Jadi jangan berikan buku ini kepada yang Muslim. Jangan berikan buku itu kepada yang Muslim.
Oh. Okay, so that's the 4 kinds of generosity.
Jadi itu adalah 4 contoh pemberian kemurah hatian.
Okay, so maybe a couple of questions.
Good evening, Venerable. My name is Giselle. I want to ask, in the book which is given, it's written about Tara. Would you mind to explain more about Tara, please? Thank you.
Okay, so to say something about Tara, because you're getting the cards. Okay, so Tara is a female manifestation of the Buddha, yeah, and her speciality is eliminating obstacles and bringing success.
Eliminating obstacles and?
Eliminating obstacles and bringing success.
Bringing success. Oke. Jadi pertanyaannya adalah meminta Venerable untuk menjelaskan mengenai Tara. Tara adalah manifestasi dalam wujud perempuan dari Buddha, dan specialty atau kelebihan dari Tara ini adalah membantu untuk melenyapkan kesulitan-kesulitan dan membantu kita untuk mencapai kesuksesan.
Yeah. And so in the Tibetan community, if somebody's sick or somebody's having financial problems or they just opened a new business or something like that, then they'll very often ask the monastery to do a puja. You know the word puja, to Tara.
Contohnya adalah di komunitas Tibet, Buddhisme Tibetan, gitu ya. Kadang-kadang jika ada orang yang mengalami kesulitan, misalnya dia sakit atau mungkin bisnisnya tidak berjalan dengan baik, kadang-kadang mereka meminta wihara untuk melakukan puja kepada Tara.
Yeah, one of my teachers called Tara Mummy Tara.
Ada salah satu guru saya yang memanggil Tara dengan sebutan Mami Tara.
Yeah, because he said that when you're a child, you know, and you need help, who do you call out to? Your mom.
Mengapa begitu? Karena pada saat kita sebagai anak kecil, kalau kita mengalami kesulitan, siapa yang kita panggil? Ibu.
So he was saying that she's like a mother to all the sentient beings.
Dia itu seakan-akan seperti seorang ibu untuk semua makhluk hidup.
Yeah, that doesn't mean that you call out and you say, Tara, I want to win the lottery.
Bukan berarti kita bisa langsung teriak gitu ya, Tara, saya mau menang lotre.
Yeah. Okay. But rather, when you do the meditation on Tara or prayers to Tara, then it changes your mind. Your mind feels happier and brighter, and that often has some good effects on the environment around you as well.
Saat kita bermeditasi dengan objek Tara, kita akan merasakan kebahagiaan, sifat kita akan jadi lebih bahagia, dan juga membawa kebahagiaan ini di orang-orang di sekitar kita.
Okay, there's 20, actually I was going to say there's 21 Taras because there's there's an arrangement of 21 Taras, each one holding different implements and having different specialities. But actually, there's over 108 Taras too.
Tadinya saya mau menyebutkan bahwa ada 21 Tara yang mana mereka memegang benda yang berbeda-beda dan punya kelebihan yang berbeda-beda. Tapi kemudian saya ingat bahwa sebenarnya ada 108 Tara.
Okay. So there's one Tara who is for long life, another Tara who will help with wisdom.
Ada Tara yang membantu untuk umur yang panjang, ada juga yang membantu untuk kebijaksanaan.
Okay, so that gives you some idea of the benefits of practicing Tara.
Apakah cukup menjawab?
What I want to ask is there such thing as being too generous? There's always an exchange of time, resources, and energy and attention, but where do you draw the line that it gives you more trouble, more damage, and more harm to you because you're trying to be generous?
Yeah. I know somebody who is like that, who I consider overly generous, constantly. Well, put it this way, we were traveling and our plane landed in Bangkok, and he arrived, and we were going on to Singapore, but he spent the whole day in Bangkok. He had brought with an empty suitcase, so he could buy presents for his whole family. Okay, I thought that was a little bit too much, carrying an empty suitcase to buy presents. Yeah, especially because he had been telling me how he needed to save money. He wanted to pay for something else for his family. So he needed to save money, but then he was just, So some people are like that. You have to kind of rein them in. He actually told me at one point, because I had commented to him about this kind of over-the-top generosity when he needed to save money. And he said that he realized he was giving so that people wouldn't be angry at him. Yeah, and then I think it made him realize that his motivation wasn't a really pure motivation. Yeah, he wasn't giving because he wanted to make others happy, but because he was a people pleaser, so that they wouldn't be angry. Yeah. So, that's why it's so important to always look at our motivation and also look at the practicalities of it.
Oke, pertanyaannya adalah apakah ada yang dinamakan terlalu murah hati? Bagaimana kita tahu batasnya? Kemudian ceritanya adalah saya pernah berpergian ke Bangkok, di mana saya berpergian dengan seseorang ini, seorang pria, di mana orang itu membawa sebuah koper kosong. Pada saat ditanya kenapa bawa koper kosong, karena dia ternyata ingin membeli oleh-oleh. Jadi satu koper kosong itu khusus didedikasikan untuk bisa memberikan oleh-oleh kepada semua teman-teman dan keluarganya dia. Padahal orang itu sebenarnya membutuhkan uangnya untuk ditabung untuk keperluan-keperluan lainnya. Jadi ini memberikan contoh bahwa kita semua harus kembali ke motivasi, karena sebenarnya motivasi orang tersebut tidak tulus. Sebenarnya dia bukan benar-benar murah hati, tapi ada motivasi lainnya. Jadi pada saat kita menerapkan praktek murah hati ini, kita harus kembalikan lagi ke motivasi kita ini apa pada saat kita murah hati.
Okay. But if somebody wants to give a gift, you shouldn't stop them.
Tapi saat ada orang yang ingin memberikan pemberian, jangan dilarang.
Okay. You might talk to them about the motivation for future gifts, but at that time, if they want to give something, don't interfere.
Mungkin kita bisa mengingatkan mereka mengenai motivasinya untuk pemberian-pemberian berikutnya, tapi yang untuk kali ini diterima saja.
Okay. Okay, so I think it's late. Yeah,
Lagi.
we've got to close for the evening. So let's come back to your breath, and like we did last night, really rejoice at the merit you created coming to the talk, and rejoice at the merit we created as a group, our collective merit, by sharing the Dharma this evening.
Mari kita kembali lagi dan kita merenungkan perasaan sukacita karena kita semua telah melakukan jasa kebaikan, karena kita telah datang ke sini malam ini. Selain itu juga merenungkan jasa kebaikan yang kita telah ciptakan bersama-sama sebagai kelompok yang semua yang hadir di sini malam ini.
Okay, so let your mind be happy, rejoicing at your own merit and others' merit.
Biarkan pikiran kita merasakan kebahagiaan dan bersukacita atas jasa kebaikan yang telah kita lakukan, baik kita sendiri ataupun bersama-sama.
And then imagine practicing generosity with your merit, and imagine giving your merit to all sentient beings, dedicating it so that they can have happiness while they're in samsara, and so that they can have the ultimate happiness of liberation and awakening.
Mari kita dedikasikan jasa kebaikan ini untuk semua makhluk hidup agar mereka semua dapat terbebaskan.